Welcome to the Volunteer and Combination Officer section webinar series. We welcome you and thank you for attending. These are recorded and we hope that you will share the recorded version either with your officers, maybe during an officers meeting, or just share it for general information with your members. Today, we're going to talk about why do we keep killing firefighters over and over again. And we're not going to ignore the injury part as well. The panelists will get to introduce themselves in a little bit. We're going to do a couple little things. I got to take care of the political stuff for the VCOS as well. So we encourage all firefighters to register for cancer. Do the National Firefighter Registry because we need the data. We need to be able to prove that cancer is actually killing firefighters. The German Township Fire Chief, who happens to be a female, just was, I should say successful. That's not the right word. Just got good news that her breast cancer is not cancerous. The stuff that they had found was not cancerous. But I still asked her to go in and register at the National Firefighter Registry so that we have the data. The other thing is prostate cancer. I'll let Billy talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so I went through that a couple of years ago. I got went for my annual physical, and my doctor said my numbers are starting to go up, but she said you can wait. We'll wait and keep an eye on it. Okay, fine. So that's my first lesson to you. You only wait one time. If you ever go back and your numbers are up again, the doctor says we can wait. The answer is no. I want to go to urologist or oncologist or wherever you would go. So the next year was COVID, and like everything, I skipped my annual physical. I don't think they were doing them. And then the next year I went, and my numbers were up again. And I said, no, we need to go talk to somebody. So I go and get tested, biopsied, all that kind of stuff. And for sure, I had prostate cancer, had a very, very aggressive form of prostate cancer. It was interesting. So while my stage was stage 1, and that stage literally pictures a stage. You're on stage. That's where I am right now, right? But my Gleason score, which is a score you can Google or you can reach out to me and I'll tell you about it. But my Gleason score was a 9. 0 is great. 6 and below is good. 6 and above is scary. Anything above, 10 is a death sentence. So I was a 9.5. So it was moving very quickly. So they went in and did what they had to do. So I got the surgery. I can tell you there was no pain at any time. And then after that, I went about a week in bed. And a couple months later, I was back to work. There are some challenges with it. Your prostate controls your sexual function, and it also controls your urination. So the urination part, you wear a Depends for a couple weeks. No big deal. They were actually more comfortable than my damn underwear was. I've actually considered just keep wearing those. And then after that, you wear a pad, and you learn how to control your pee, and you never pass a bathroom. And sexual function is decent, not like it was, but I'm not 18 anymore either. But it still works, and things are good, but it's just different. But I'm alive, and that's really the thing. At no time was I scared, and I don't want to sound like some big badass fireman. I'm telling you the truth, and that's not always the case for everybody, and everybody's different. You got to respect that. I was not at all scared. I felt very confident. I was worried for my grandkids and for my kids. If you know anything about me, I play a very, very active role in all my kids' lives every day, all day. And that was my worry, is I felt like I really needed to try and be around longer. Not that I had any control over that. But I go now every 6 months, and I'm 3.5 years past, and everything's great. No symptoms, no nothing. My numbers are great. And I go 6 months for the rest of my life, and that's fine. I like that, actually. It's sort of every 6 months, because it can come back, and you've heard about that. And the lesson here for it, and I have a website, as John has posted there, 40 Plus Fire. You can go check it out. All kinds of information on there about prostate cancer. But the key is you got to get checked. We are the best at ignoring stuff. And you got to go if you don't go get checked, it's not going to go away. And through the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, I went through their training, and now I do a lot of mentoring with firefighters who have cancer. And I just recently did one with a guy who's ignored it and not gone for his test, and now he's got a very, very, very difficult road ahead if he survives. So 40 plus fires, basically, if you're 40 years old and you're going to fires, you need to get checked. And that's primarily a message for um, the male firefighters out there, okay? But it's also for female firefighters. Not that you have a prostate, but you have other areas of concern that need to get checked. So any firefighter from the age of 40 up, if you're not going for a full screening, full cancer screening, and again, I'm going to tell you, if you have cancer, you want to know now. You don't want to wait 10 years. Because then one day you're going to go piss in the bathroom, you're going to piss blood, and your entire life changes that day. So anyway, that's my message on that, John. So keep going.
Well, Billy, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you told me when you called me to tell me you had it?
Dude, I wish I
Okay.
did.
No, what you said was, I knew I was going to get it. I just didn't know when.
Yes. You know, it's funny. I was just down in Florida this past week and I did a program for the firefighters down there. And that's very true. You know, the longer you're on this job, the longer chance you have. And I always thought I'm either going to get a heart attack, I'm going to get cancer, something's going to happen. And yes, that's exactly, I told you that and other people, because you kind of know, and especially the generation you and I started in the 70s, we weren't wearing masks. We wore rubber pull-up boots. We used to brag about blowing black snots for 2 or 3 days after a good fire. Like you'd hold your tissue up and say, "Look at that shit," right? And that was a sign because it was cool. We didn't know what we didn't know, and that's a great. I appreciate you bringing it up, John. I'll be very quick because I know we got a lot to cover today. But we didn't know what we didn't know back then. Today we know what we know. And we have so many systems in place so you don't have to rot away at 60 pounds at age 60. You can survive this stuff, but you got to get checked. And don't be a moron. Don't breathe this shit. Wear your mask. Don't stand in the smoke. It's just basic stuff. It's not real complicated.
We're gonna talk about that in just a minute here. But my final comment, and we'll move ahead. But is that when you look at for the volunteer firefighters, especially when you go fill out the report, the information for your doctor, and they ask for employment, record that you're a volunteer firefighter because the doctor says, "Oh, you're a plumber, no big deal, not worried about it." No, you're a firefighter. Volunteers, don't forget you're employed by your fire department. So that'll be it. I'll say that, and you guys, everybody do that, please. The VCOS has Symposium in the Sun in November. If you've never attended, we hopefully you'd consider it. This will be our 25th presentation this year, not 25 years because we missed COVID. So it'll be the 25th presentation, but you need to look at it, sign up early, Symposium in the Sun, do a Google search, and you'll be able to find that. The IFC offers lots of other training that are online, just like many other programs, but we encourage you to look at Workforce Solutions and get some of their training. A new program starting now is the Critical Thinking Academy. We have the pilot offering in about a month. It is 3 weekends, 2 days of each, and hopefully it's going to be something the VCOS is going to be able to get out there, teach people how to think critically and make decisions after they've made an analysis of why they need to make the decision. The VCOS offers many courses, several courses, I should say, that are here. Here's a labor management program that we have. We have Beyond Hoses and Helmets, which is basically based upon recruitment and retention. And here are some of the things the VCOS is doing. And I'm not going to repeat that. So now let's let the panelists introduce themselves. So, Billy, go ahead.
So I'm Billy Goldfetter. I've been a firefighter for 52 years, still working, deputy chief. Tied to my cancer story, I do not use an air pack anymore, meaning I don't go in. Part of the problem is probably I didn't use an air pack years ago, right? At Loveland Sims Fire Department, basically my role is as a division supervisor at fires and stuff. But the day of quote crawling down the halls are over. I didn't want to overdo it and expose myself. I am. Let's see. John and I helped form VCOS the way it is today. I was the last chair of the IFC volunteer committee. And now VCAS has made a name for themselves. So I'm pretty proud of being part of that back then. I have no plans to retire until my body or something else tells me that I need to stop. I love being a firefighter, and that's it. The rest you can check out. I just published our fourth book, did the 3 Pass It On series books, and Frank Lieb and I just published a book called 30 Fires You Must Know. I urge you, beg you, please buy the book. We make no money on it. All of our royalties are being donated to 4 firefighter charities. You can check that out on the Fire Engineering website. But if you're going to fires in 2025, you've got to read this book. And I'm very, very proud that we are blowing away all kinds of sales records and all that stuff. So that's not only good to raise money for the Ray Downey Scholarship, the First Responder Center of Excellence, the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, and the Tunnels to Towers, but it's also meaning we're educating firefighters about what happened before they were firefighters or just within recent years. So lots going on, but most importantly, I've just had my 7th grandbaby, and I'm in Maryland right now at my son's job. They loaned me an office, and then I'm going to head back and see my grandbabies later. So that's about it. Thank you for having me on today, John. I appreciate it.
Welcome. Jesse?
Well, I think it's fair to say I'm the new kid on the block with this one. I've been in the fire service since 2001. I worked for my hometown department as a paid-on-call firefighter prior to being hired with the Northville Township Fire Department, which is in the Detroit metropolitan area here in Michigan. For the almost 23 years that I've been here, I worked on shift for several of those years and have found myself in the training office for the last several years. Over that time, I've had a lot of cool opportunities, being able to work with a lot of great people in the fire service, both inside of our organization and outside of it. I'm on the board of directors for the ISFSI, and have been fortunate to teach a number of those programs over the last few years. And I also work as a education and training coordinator with FSRI. So that's brought up a lot of the research and data. I know we've touched on that a little bit in our brief time, so just trying to take everything in and be my best version of everybody that's on this call here.
All right. Thank you. Brian?
Brian Kazmerzak. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Safety, which is our fire chief position in the city of Benton Harbor, Michigan. And been in the fire service now since 1991. Been with Billy since 2006. Run the Director of Operations spot for Firefighter Close Calls. So, as I always joke, and I tell the same story every single time, Billy still tries using the whiteout in the computer screen. So I'm the guy that saves Billy from that, the man behind the curtain. I've been here at Benton Harbor. Be 5 years on Friday. I've been here. So we went from a public safety department that relied on the cops to come back to get the fire trucks to now having career full-time firefighters again. We do that through code enforcement. We're allowed, we use our code enforcement budget to pay for our firefighters because they go out and they do code enforcement when they're not on firefighting duty. So fire inspections, rental inspections, that type of stuff. So basically been able to reinvent the department because I have a very good boss that lets me do what I want. And very seldom does he tell me I'm an idiot. So works out well. So, and John, I was pain in your butt for a long time, but we get along great. And it's always thought stimulation when you and I get together.
Well, thank you, Brian. Billy, it's funny that you mentioned the Ray Downey Foundation. I don't think I ever met him. I did not know him. So I bought the book that is, I think his son wrote about him to learn about him, because everybody talks about his, Rescue 2 experiences and the FEMA stuff and all that good stuff. So I'm going to learn more about him. So
just real quick story, since you brought it up. So I'm walking along FDIC in the 90s and I hear a guy call me, and it was Ray Downey. He wanted to chat with me for a minute. Him and Jim Page both did that to me in my career, and pretty much I could have ended my life at that point and it wowould have been a full life. He was an unbelievable man, as you certainly know.
Yeah. So we've already mentioned cancer cancer is the number one killer of firefighters. Used to be cardiac events. but now it is the number cancer is it. And it's because we have the exposure to the carcinogens. So, all right, what happened here? There we go. It's pretty easy. Again, I don't need to tell you this. We encourage you to look at the lavender ribbon report, be the NVFC and the VCOS produced, has lots of different ideas in there. But now let's get into the meat of the program we want to talk about today. And we have a lot of officers that become officers who have some training. I'm sorry, they have some education, maybe some training, but they have minimal expertise and they have no courage or no experience. And so the question becomes this comes out of Chief Brunici's Fire Command book. Do you have the courage to make decisions to keep firefighters safer? It's not rocket science kind of stuff. It's pretty simple stuff. And, we know that NIOSH produces a report on most every line of duty death, and these are the 5 most common causes of line of duty deaths. Again, all simple things that can be handled. So,
do you mind if I comment back on that slide there?
Go right ahead.
We see these in every traumatic line of duty death report. So firefighters dying inside buildings, right? That's where we see these. It's the same thing over and over again. So it goes back to that definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. How is it that we continue, John, you were on the NIMS task force when you were the I Chiefs president back in 2001. I mean, NIMS has been mandated forever. Fire Command's been around since 85. Fire Scope was, in the 70s. Why is it that we still have this lack of incident command, lack of accountability piece in here?
Let me throw something at you. So you made a comment that you're going to have to, this is your 15th year teaching at that same fire school, and you're going to have to come up with a new program. Actually, no, because you don't have the same firefighters in the program anymore. You can keep doing the same program every year and they're going to rotate through. That's the problem we're seeing here. We're not latching on where we need to. And really it comes down to, let's say you do a great program at your fire department today. In 10 years, it may or may not be alive based upon how you set it up, how you engage, got the people engaged. It may not become part of your culture. I believe, and we can maybe use this through the rest of our discussion, if we're not investing in our company officers, we might as well shut down. I can do without the chiefs. You can do without the chiefs, but without a good company officer. And here's my example. You can have an amazing fire chief, but if the company officers don't carry out that, whatever that is, it ain't going to happen. You can have a horrendous fire chief, but if you got good company officers, those companies are still going to get it done on the fire ground. And it comes down to holding that company officer accountable. But I think you showed a slide before. We're promoting people that don't have the experience, don't have the courage, all that. The courage part is this. We tell people when we recruit them about the brotherhood, the sisterhood, we love each other, we care each other, we're going to be friends with each other, we're going to go fishing with each other, all that. And now one day, boom, now I'm your boss. Well, wait a minute, I was supposed to be nice to you. I'm supposed to love you. I'm supposed to care about you. Well, yes, sort of, right? So there's a hell of a step when you go from firefighter to company officer. That's, to me, the biggest step. And we don't always promote the right people in those positions. And the question is, and I'll yield to you, what is your department, and this is anybody listening, what is your department doing to prepare those people and to continually train your company officers? The greatest risk you have is being watched by your company officer, whether it's in the fire ground or if it's in the firehouse. Whether it's improperly touching somebody or not venting the building properly, it falls on the company officer. And you need to invest in that. And I would challenge any fire chief, show me the last 100 problems you had, and I'll show you 95 of them that could have been dealt with at the company officer level if you invest in the company officers. Go ahead.
Jesse, jump in here.
Yeah, I think when we talk about courage, I think a big part of courage is having the courage to start with yourself. So looking at that company officer position, not as the end of the road or end of the journey, but really the beginning of a new journey, and having the courage to look within yourself and understand what could be and what needs to be improved with respect to all the things that we just talked about. The NIOSH top 5, it applies to every organization, every firefighter, every company officer. there's something we can do better in those top 5 universally in the fire service. So when I think of courage and the company officer, that's what I think of is the courage to start with yourself and then model that behavior in a way that the rest of the people you are going to work with are going to emulate that.
Not everybody has that genetic makeup to be the boss, to give bad news, to say, don't do that. And that was my point before. We bring you in because we're all friends and having a ball at the kitchen table. It takes a very special person, and the organization needs to identify that. I mean, there's some great firefighters out there that have no business riding the front seat.
So I see it from a little bit different angle around me right now. And this goes back to a class that there's a battalion chief from Indianapolis, Candy Ashby, that does leading from the bottom up. And I see that happening in areas near me. The company officers, the firefighters are the leaders, but the chiefs are holding them up. The chiefs are refusing to do box cards, refusing to adopt incident command policies. And it's the guys going out and saying, no, I got a department near me that they're going to call the Benton Harbor box if they have a fire because their chief hasn't got box cards. So they've said, no, you know what? We're calling your box just so we get people here. And so they're the ones being the leaders, but it's the people up top have kind of retired in place is what I'm seeing.
And those people, John, are the same ones who will tell you we had a fire yesterday. And the answer is you didn't have shit. Some poor bastard in your community had a fire and he thought maybe you'd show up and maybe know what to do with it. So when chiefs don't want to get along with their neighbors, they don't want to do mutual aid box alarms, they don't want to do training, they're doing it on the backs of the poor people who are paying taxes thinking they actually have a fire department.
And we'll come back to that, but I want to go back to this word courage, because one of the reasons I made that red was because I see it, and it was mentioned about whether you're their buddy or you're their boss. And it is a difficult decision to make. I used to tell people, don't make me put my white helmet on. I will
make me do my job, right?
But if you do something and I put my white helmet on, you're not going to be happy. So what kind of advice do you have? I'll go to Jesse on this one. Do you have for that officer who's new? How does he or she have developed that courage to say, you're wrong and you got to change?
Yeah, I think there's a number of opportunities for somebody who's actively preparing to be a company officer to exercise their skills with critical or crucial conversations. I think one of those opportunities is their interaction with the new firefighters. That's part of what we're talking about, right? The pass it on concept. So making ourselves present and accountable with those new hires and those new members and giving them clear expectations, clear directions, I think is a good way to practice with respect to having the courage to talk to people who've been here for a while. And I do think it's easy for people to take the path of least resistance and to just kind of move it on down the road versus having those hard stops, whether it's the soft intervention of, hey, don't you think we could do this a different way? Or do you really think that's a good idea? To the firm intervention of, you need to stop right now, or you need to start right now. So I think those are all examples of how we can better prepare ourselves once we are in those positions as company officers or leaders within the organization.
You size up your fire and you size up your people. And what you mentioned, Jesse, is it depends on the situation of the employee. Some employees, I'm going to say, hey, don't do that again, and I'm good. Others, I'm going to get in their ass. It depends on who they are. We treat everybody equal. Yes, of course, when it comes to the legalities and stuff, but know your people and size them up, man. And big deal.
Yeah. Well, and Jesse, you just said this, path of least resistance. Brian, I want to come to you with that statement because, the Indianapolis 500 pit crew, they don't shortcut anything. They do it exactly right because of the consequences. So help the officer understand the consequences of taking the path of least resistance.
Well, and I just taught a class on this last night. It goes back to normalization of deviance, right? And the Indiana Fire School, and I think Jesse, were you there when they had Mike Mullane talk this year at down there?
No, I was not there this year.
Well, they had Mike Mullane, the astronaut. He was one of the astronauts that helped with the investigation from the Challenger disaster talk. And normalization of deviance is what we do all the time, right? That is the path of least resistance. And you can look at so many of these line of duty deaths, including one that I was involved with, where it was normalization of deviance. They knew those people were a problem, but you know what? It's just him. It's just so and so. We're going to look over that, or he's a good firefighter, or she's a good firefighter. We're going to overlook those decisions and that. So that's where the courage comes in, right? Because you have to have the hard road. And John, you made this silly poster of me a couple months ago, and I hate the poster, but I like the saying on it. And it says, you don't grow when you're comfortable, you grow when you're uncomfortable. And we have to make people uncomfortable to realize that they need some growth, right? And that's where we're at. If you take the path of least resistance, you're never going to grow.
Well, it's funny because I was at that same line of duty death that you're talking about. And that's the first thing the chief said to me was about the deceased firefighter. He was a freelancer. We knew he was a freelancer, just like his father.
Yep. Well,
holy cow.
Well, I was in charge of the tech rescue team at the time. And when I got the call to respond with the TRT team for a building collapse, I said, it's so-and-so, isn't it? And they're like, oh, yeah, it is. I went to the fire academy with him in 1991. I mean, I've known him my entire career. So, and we all knew it was a problem and it never got addressed, right? So that's where the courage piece comes in. If we take the path of least resistance, we're never going to get where we need to be.
So let's dig a little bit deeper. So now those of you listening to this discussion, what do you do? Well, when you get promoted, people say, oh, you've changed. Yes, I hope so. Yes, you are. Now, again, I'll tell any fire chief the toughest job is the company officer, because chief, you can go back to your officer. The company officer still has to break bread and sleep and everything else with these people. But when you get promoted, is possibly your greatest opportunity to make those changes and decide what your plan is. And you don't need to be a jerk. We got plenty of jerks. We just need to set the tone. And from now on, this is what I expect as the new lieutenant, as the new captain. Truck checks are going to be surgically perfect. You will never be late to work. You will never fail to wear your seatbelt. Here's my new lieutenant top 10. This is what we're going to do, gang. And this is how we're going to do it. And I'm going to set the example by always doing it. But I think to do what you guys just talked about, the best opportunity you have is when you get promoted to make the decision that I'm going to be. Again, you're not talking about a full total personality change. But yeah, you put the bars on. You're a boss, so be a boss.
Billy, I said, when I was a firefighter, I wouldn't have wanted me to work for me, because I did some stupid stuff as a firefighter. But the minute I got in charge of people and I was now responsible, that's when I changed. That's when I, made that change. Is I freelanced. I pushed the limits. I would get mad at the chiefs for pulling us out. But then, hey, once I'm the one in the front yard, and you and I to talk about this when we see some of the social media banter, right? Have they ever been in charge of firefighters on a fire ground? Because
you don't see a whole lot of chiefs posting stupid shit on the internet about going in without a mask. I'm sure there's one or two. But for the most part, if you've ever owned responsibility of a fire, especially when there's been a near miss or a close call, you understand how serious this stuff is. And again, I have two different personalities on the fire ground and when we're not on the fire ground. And I don't care at all what happens. You can send me less Christmas cards. You can call me every name in the book. You can have the Elon Musk committee come in and investigate me. I don't care. Whatever you want to do. On the fire ground, my only goal is to take care of those people inside and to take care of you while you're taking care of them. And that doesn't mean I'm not willing to allow you to take risk. I fully allow you to take risk based upon the conditions, and I got to trust you in that.
And the key is limited. Go ahead, Jesse. I'm sorry.
All right. That was me.
Brian.
Billy, our good friend Ricky Riley, he started calling Ubers for people on the fire ground that wouldn't follow orders. I had a chief show up wearing extrication gear to a structure fire. The same chief showed up and went inside without an air pack on. And basically that was my last conversation is I'm going to pull a Ricky Riley move and call you an Uber to take you back to your station if you can't play by the rules.
I watched John Solka when he was battalion chief in the Bronx put a highly respected company in timeout essentially because they did not do what he expected them to do.
Yeah. Well, it's this is the kind of stuff that the people listening, need to understand. Let me just tell a quick little story because I am the way I am because in 1979 I put 9 firefighters in the hospital on a structure collapse of a closed building that was destroyed, that was rebuilt by the insurance company, and is still in business today. I could have killed 9 firefighters for nothing because they had insurance, which that's what they should have. It's not our fault if they don't have insurance. It's their fault. So, the risk is not worth it, or the consequences are not worth it. You do not want to live with that. I live with that every day. I will never forget knocking on Mrs. Bushell's door saying, "Ma'am, you need to get dressed. We need to go to the hospital." And one of the worst days in my life. So let's go back to this slide here, and let's talk about the accountability. And Jesse, I'm gonna bring the volunteer fire service in here, and can you just sort of talk a little bit about the accountability on the fire ground for volunteers who might be doing home response?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the lessons I learned in the fire service actually came from the volunteer department that I worked for. Local hometown department, knew a lot of people that worked for that organization prior to working there, and I thought they excelled actually at a lot of the things that we're talking about right now in terms of what it means to actually look out for your guys and girls and what that means. Not giving them the path of least resistance or taking it, but finding ways to have accountability, whether it's at the station or on scene. And one quick example I can think of from a battalion chief there was on a really bad auto accident. He asked me to basically disconnect the battery. I didn't have my turnout gloves on at the time because I was in a panic getting out of the door. I was fresh, and he quickly he put me in timeout. And his message was, if you forgot your gloves, I'm not sure what else you forgot. Let's get the next man up. And I felt like that accountability transcended whether it was the accountability at the station and what was expected or the fire ground. So maintaining accountability as that tactical or strategic level incident commander, to know where your crews are, to know what they're doing, to know who your crews are. So whether you track that with a tactical worksheet, whether you track that with a command board, the reality is we have to track it with something. And that includes the person who's actually in charge. From the person who's on scene, it can be really difficult to feel any sense of accountability when you're not sure who's in charge of that incident. So I think there's a number of ways in today's day and age where it can be maintained, whether that's a passport system and we're tracking those as people come up, whether that's a forward staging location like the volunteer department next to us has. They have a cone that is literally your way in and out of the incident. You drop the tags off and you're put to work from there. So I think there's a number of ways to do it. I think the idea is you have to have a way, and that way has to be communicated and clarified, not just in your organization, but with respect to the other organizations that are going to be operating on your scenes as well.
In 1983, my fire chief in Florida, Henry Sheffield, who's since passed away, put a grease marker in every riding position, and you wrote your name where you were sitting on the glass window. That was the cheapest and possibly the most effective accountability system, because he said, if we ever have an emergency, I'll send one person to check the rigs. And I knew, and that was a volunteer fire department. But again, who's ultimately accountable? We can have scanners, we can have tags, we can have all this stuff. Give me a good company officer, and I've got that accountability covered for those 3 or 4 people together. And again, it keeps falling, at least in my world, it keeps falling back. And that's why our organization under Uber, our chief, we spend so much money on our company officers in training and programs, because that's where the rubber meets the road.
Brian?
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts on this. Number one, I really think, and here comes the hate mail, but I really think we need to look at what the Europeans are doing with entry control boards, where they put their tag in a little slot at the door that starts a timer and has just look up SCBA entry control board on Google. It's really cool stuff. And I think it would solve a lot of our issues. But the other piece is we rely on tags. Tags only I do one thing, and this is an old Alan Brunacini quote. Tags identify the dead. And that sounds terrible, but that's the case. To be accountable for your people, you need to know 5 things of every person on the fire ground. Who's there? That's the tag. What are they doing? Where are they doing it? Why are they doing it? And how long have they been doing it? If I can answer those 5 things about everybody that's on my fire ground, then I am accountable. If I can't, I don't have accountability for you. The tags mean nothing if I can't answer the other 4.
Thank you, Brian. Well, you guys have expanded the word accountability to include the word behavior. You've mentioned that a little bit. And again, I want to stick with the volunteer firefighter here, because in the career department, the company officer should know their personnel. They know they're good, they're bad, and they're ugly, so to speak. But Brian, you almost went there, because accountability is also behavior. Are they capable of doing, of your list of 5, I'm thinking there's 6. Are they capable of doing of what you have assigned them to do? So any thoughts on how do you make sure that, I always said most important thing I need to know is what you're capable of doing. When was the last time you attended ladder training? If I expect you to raise a ladder, any comments on that?
Well, I'll touch on that. And this may not be the popular version, but we do it. We only run with departments that have the same standards that we have. And our motto has become standards over feelings. We may hurt some feelings by not calling you, but if you're not training to the same standard that we're training to, and you're not playing by the same rules on your fire ground, we don't want to come to your fires, and we're not going to call you to ours. Now, people may call that buddy boxes or whatever you want to call it. That's not the case. We want the same staffing and the same training levels. So I know when Lincoln Township comes to my scene, I'm going to get the best of the best. And luckily, I'm in a resource-rich area and I only have 2 departments I can't call. But one of the departments, they didn't train for the last quarter of the year because they claimed they didn't have money. So they cut out all training for the last quarter. Training is the most important thing we do next to response.
You don't need any money to do training.
And that's exactly what I said. But they stopped all training for 90 days because they said they had no money for it. So that's how we do it. The people I run with, the people on our boxes, are trained to the same standard. They meet the same requirements. They operate in the same system, incident command, accountability, Mayday. They have the same policies, procedures, and we all talk. And their chiefs are good people that want to go to fires and want to do right. And I know there's people that say, oh, it should always be the closest. Well, in theory, it should. But if you have somebody that don't play by the rules, I don't think you should call them.
I'd even carry it a step maybe backward, Brian, if they at least showed an effort.
Right.
If they said, hey, we don't have any money for training, but could we once a month come over and hang out with you guys and do a little drill?
Yep.
I think that's really the effort. That's the issue. Just make an effort. Try.
That is a good word, is try. You can't accomplish anything if you sit on the sidelines. You've got to be in the game. To be in the game, you got to be trained and competent. And it's education, training, research, and experience. 4 things. Everybody has a list. Those are mine. The research is that you continue to read and learn about it, other than just completing your initial training. So,
well, that's got to be for the chiefs too. You can't sit in your office when the companies are training. Now, I'm not suggesting you go out and pull hose. Do not do that. You're in the way, and they don't want you doing it anyway. What you need to do is when the companies are out doing drills, lead that drill or command that drill or test your skills. Quarterly, we do burns at our tower, and the area chiefs have to go down there and run a scenario, not as the instructor, but as a chief IC, and you're being evaluated by the instructors to see how you do. But whether it's career or volunteer, we see this thing of the chief sitting in the office and not going to training. That's like what team are you going to bet on in the NFL where the coach doesn't attend training, but yet they're going to play on Sunday? You're going to put $100 down on that? You'd be a fool.
Billy, it's worse than that. We have chiefs that don't attend runs.
Well, sometimes that's a good thing.
Well, we're going to stay on this slide for a bit because there's other things here to talk about. And Brian, you mentioned all the different incident command training sessions that are out there, but to have that listed by NIOSH as the top 5 reasons firefighters are killed is the lack of incident command. So, Jesse, why is it that we continue to have fire departments that respond on calls that don't have a good incident command system? And
I
what
think
can be
some of
done about it?
yeah, I think some of it is circumstance. And the example I'll give you there is as an 18-year-old paid on call firefighter, when I first started, I kind of just assumed that there'd be all these firefighters on every scene I went to, and that they'd all be more experienced.
You thought they knew what they were doing too, didn't
That
you?
wasn't the case, and there were several incidents where I found myself as either the only member on that scene or somehow the senior member on that scene. So I think the first part is there has to be an awareness of what the incident command system looks like in your organization. And there has to be a willingness to make sure that all of your members understand that basic framework, whatever it is, for making those decisions, which includes our initial radio report, which includes the anything else that goes with that, a 360, a follow-up report. How am I determining what that strategy is or what the tactics are going to be? Because if it's not understood clearly in that organization, we create these single points of failure where Joe wasn't here today and Joe's the only person who knows what to do in that situation. There has to be a way to make that universal in the organization. And I think a really good opportunity with that is on the drill nights to obviously discuss the lecture part of this and tell people why, but to get the reps on what we're actually doing and what it sounds like on the radio. Because not only was I nervous back then, I didn't know what I was supposed to say anyways. So if I could have those audio recordings back, I'm guessing there would have been something I'd have liked to have done a little bit differently on that. But I will say organizationally, one thing we push here is that first unit on scene is going to assume command. We can't wait for people to make decisions. So every member in our organization has the same level of training as a baseline with respect to incident command, same framework, same terminology, same manner of executing that. And we only pass command once. So we're not going to pass it every time a different colored helmet shows up or a different type of apparatus. It's going to change hands one time so we can maintain accountability and adequate communications of that incident. So those would be some of my suggestions for improving incident command.
Well, let's talk about the experience. And again, I want to stick on the volunteer fire service for one more comment here, because let me ask you this question. I'll go to Brian. You pull up, you only got 3 people on the scene. You need to go inside the burning building to try to put the fire out. Do you send one person in on the hose line and have an instant commander, or do you send 2 people in and let the pump operator be command?
You couldn't have asked me a better question, because this was our class at Missouri Fire School. This is the aggressive tactics for low staff companies is what Drew and I taught at Missouri Winter Fire School. And, that is a game time decision, right? And the way we preached it and the way we did it at Benton Harbor for a long time, the pump operator was the incident commander until we had a regular incident commander in place. I want 2 people inside. We're a team inside. That way, if somebody does go through the floor or whatever. So that's my opinion. Now, you could do the other, but if you find a victim in there, one person isn't pulling out most victims. So, and you're only going in, right, on a report of a victim with 3 people, right, in theory. Other than that, you should be, doing the whole hit it hard from the yard. I mean, I know we probably like 2 in, 2 out, but it's not right. But yeah, if you got 3 people, what's going to be the most bang for your buck? Honestly, I think every fire department should be required to have a personal attack monitor, a RAM or a blitz fire on their apparatus. And because that's a set it and forget it. It's like the Ronco oven of firefighting. And I'm dating myself with the Ronco oven quote, but Jesse may be even too young to remember that. But, you can put out a lot of fire real quick with a RAM or a blitz fire.
Right.
So that, in a lot of places, that's going to be your best option. You punch it in the mouth. It's just like football. If you sack the quarterback on 1st and 10 and now it's 2nd and 20, you've made a big dent, right? Can it come back? Sure, it can come back, but it's got a lot farther to go.
Yeah, the mission should be put water on the fire as fast as possible in an adequate volume from a safest position as possible. And I may not have that exactly right, but that's the whole point. When you look at the experience part and the lack of instant command, the improper risk assessment, what is the training out there? I don't care. This is not a career or volunteer question. What is the training to be the incident commander? How do you help learn reading smoke, reading fire, learning all the things about fire dynamics? It's not fire behavior anymore. It's fire dynamics. Anybody want to take on that issue?
Yeah, it's a combination of experience in classroom and there's a million courses out there right now, thanks to UL and some others that have really done some good studies. There's programs out there. A blue card is one, but there's others where you can get that training. But it's got to be a combination of experience. That's why hospitals have residency, because we really don't want you dealing with the patient by yourself. Unfortunately, in the fire service, you can bump one day you're in charge, and that's a bit of a problem if you don't have the experience. But you've got to have something on paper that shows that you've got the training and the qualifications to take care of my son. Okay, that's I took on a couple new attitudes as I was growing. One, once I had kids, I looked at kid calls differently. Then once my son Brian became a firefighter, I started focusing on what do I want for my kid. And most of what I did in my department was pretty close. But you have that responsibility. You're taking care of somebody's kid. So I don't want some clown who was able to pass a civil service test or was a friend of the mayor, but does not have any fireground experience in charge of the fire. I don't. But I also don't want someone with loads of experience, but no formal training. It's got to be a balance of the two. And you got to understand, don't worry about the discipline. Don't worry about getting yelled at. Don't worry about the attorneys. You're going to face somebody's parents or somebody's wife or husband. You better explain why you did what you did on that fire ground. And that means sometimes you say, I have no problem taking a risk with your child because this incident required me to take that risk. It's the stupid ones where there was no reason for risk or there was freelancing, things like that, that you better figure out how you're going to face yourself and the family when that comes down the pike. So.
Yeah. And you also have to know your limitations, and you have to be able to tell that. Accept those limitations. I'll go to a large career fire department had a working commercial fire, industrial fire, I should say, not industrial fire. Within 3 minutes, the incident commander said on the radio, "Don't anybody get hurt. We're going to burn this to the ground." He said that on the radio. Of course, he caught living hell from a bunch of the older firefighters, but he was telling the truth. Because this building, it was full of plastics. You're not going to stop that fire. And he actually stood up and said it. So instead of him being supported, he was actually chastised because you announced that we're going to burn this building to the ground. He goes, "Well, did it burn to the ground?" They go, "Well, yeah, it did." Okay. So he wasn't wrong, but he wanted to make sure firefighters did not take a risk for a building that wasn't worth saving.
And one of you said this before. It's almost based upon the scenario. And I love that because people say, well, if I wouldn't do that at that fire. Well, do you have the same staffing as FDNY? Do you have the same training as FDNY? So I use a term for you. Show me the fire. What do you got? What do you want to do? What are your resources? You're not going to do what you want to do with 3 people when you have 10 people. So it's part of that size up, right?
And that's so important to be able to read the building as part of that size up. And don't forget to do a 360 before you make any decisions. We've had several firefighters die in incidents where the incident commander failed to make a 360 and didn't have a good overall picture of the fire and the building.
And when you get there, if you can't immediately do a 360 for physical reasons or logistical reasons, then assign somebody to do that when they get there. But
So,
yeah, I mean,
last Friday, Valentine's Day, was 30 years ago of the Bryceland Street fire. 30 years is that's really when 360s came about. January or February 14th, 1995. It's also where Go Teams and RIT came from.
The RIT teams, right?
Jim Crawford out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But we're still not doing 360s 30 years later. We're still seeing it in reports 30 years later. So that has to be one of those it's a non-negotiable in my world. There must be a 360.
I think one of the realities too is, regardless of the organization that we work for, we need to understand the plays in our playbook, for lack of better terms. And that's what we really put a big emphasis on organizationally is what are those plays from incident command? What is the expected play? What does right look like? So are we giving our size ups? Are we getting the 360 view? Are we giving follow-up reports? Are we identifying the incident's critical factors? And we just move down the list. The playbook has our incident command, it has search, it has fire control, ventilation, all those good things. And that playbook is based on our resources. And we know if we get in a situation where we are exceeding the capability of our resources, we are more than likely exceeding the risk margin that we'd want or expect our, as Chief Goldfeder said, our kids would be subject to. So I think with all of these topics, we have to take some time to put this operation on paper and understand what it looks like in operation, because no system, no incident command system can outmaneuver a lack of training, and vice versa. We need to have the balance that Chief Goldfeder mentioned. And I think that's a good way to try to identify what that balance looks like in your organization.
Okay. All right. Well, Brian, we got stuck on this slide here, but this has been great discussion. So let's talk about the lack of SOPs. Chief Brunacini said your rules need to be on one piece of paper. Because if you got a 300-page book, nobody's going to remember all the rules. But we look at what are the important SOPs that every fire department should have in writing, trained on, and enforced.
So
any suggestions?
I'll get to that, but I want to tackle this from a little different angle first. You can have all the SOPs in the world, but read what it says there at the end. Failure to follow. So if you're going to have them, you better follow them. Otherwise, don't even have them. They're useless if you're not. But what ones do you have to have, right? Incident command, Mayday, and hopefully those two, your neighbors are doing it the exact same way we are, or you are. We have 26 fire departments in my county. 7 of those departments have chosen not to adopt our Fire Chiefs Association policy. Why? You're not telling us how to run our department is their reason. So incident command, Mayday, respiratory protection, that's an OSHA SOG. Just response guidelines. We have something, and Jesse mentioned playbook. We call it a concept of operations document, and I'm willing to share it with anybody. That's our playbook, our concept of operations document. It is not a set in stone thing. It's not order of arrival like some departments, but what it does is it basically says if you're the second due engine, be prepared to do these things. Your driver should be prepared to do this. Your officer should be prepared to do this. Your firefighter should be prepared to do this. Now, is that task could vary based on what you get assigned when you level 1 stage? Absolutely, but it's a training document. It's not necessarily a response document. It's a training document. And that's how we drive things, is from that concept of operations document. 3 engines, a ladder, 2 chiefs. And that's kind of our response. Some of the others, obviously, you have to have all your OSHA stuff, your bloodborne pathogens, your lockout, tagout, your confined space entry, those. There's templates for all of these all over the internet. A lot of the insurance companies, BFIS or McNeil, one of those has templates on their website for SOGs. You can put fire SOG in the internet. There's also companies, obviously Lexipol does a really good job of that. But the biggest thing is it doesn't matter which ones you have and which ones you don't. If you don't follow it, then just throw it out.
Yeah. Anybody want to add something to that? All right.
It's like we talked about before about a football team. If there's no playbook, what are you going to do? You're going to bet on that team? And just some basic stuff. Sometimes it gets so complicated, some of these SOPs, but make it simple. And I can go on all day with it. You got to have a playbook. You got to understand what your responsibilities are.
Yeah, you think about that playbook, and you watch. Been going to my grandson's basketball games, and this guy is a coach, and he has the board with him all the time. So when they have a timeout, he brings them over there, and he's writing on the board. When they had the Super Bowl a couple weeks ago, the coach is listening in his ear The people upstairs are watching. These guys have done this 17, 18 times this year, but they still have things in writing. They still look at things. They're reading their iPads or their tablet devices. So, but we can't have a command board. Uh, I don't need a command board to run a house fire. Well, you do need a command board to do all the things you should do to be an incident commander. Jesse, anything you want to add?
I think everything that has been said makes so much sense. And an idea that what is the reason for the policy existing? Is it simply to have a policy, or is it to have a policy that matches what is expected of members of your organization? So back to that failure to follow or normalization of deviance. If the policies aren't commensurate with the organization, then they never will be followed, which will never lead to consistency, which ultimately will not lead to a successful fire ground. So I think that is a key concept. The policies have to match the operation. Part of that is being easily understood, a format that allows people to actually understand what you're trying to say in terms of what right looks like.
A lot of policies. Right. You got your brotherhood and T-shirts and all that shit. A lot of policies were written on the backs of your brothers and sisters who died. That's why we have policies. Oops, this happened. We don't want that to happen again. And as far as the command sheet or the command board, whoever was mentioning that, it's not to command the fire. It's in case the fire goes to shit. And now you can manage it. I mean, that's really the issue. Or if you drop dead or you have a heart attack, now what companies are where? You're a fool if you're operating a fire without a board in 2025.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Well, we are coming up on the end of the program. This slide program will be uploaded, even the slides we didn't get to show you. But, I mean, for these guys that are here, it's been awesome for me. I've not known Jesse before this, but I've known the other two for a long time. If you have ideas about a webinar you'd like to see, some topic, please email me here. And then I'm going to go to each of the presenters here for any final comments. Billy, any final comments?
Yeah, just treat your firefighters the way you would want your kids to be treated if they were your firefighters. I think if we look at the house that's on fire, consider that your house. I think if we use that as a focus, we'll probably do okay. Thanks, John, for having me. Real pleasure. Enjoyed talking about this stuff all day long.
Yeah, we could. Brian?
If you're going to put fire department on the outside of your building and advertise you're a fire department and wear the T-shirt, then you better have a plan when everything hits the fan. When there's babies trapped and mom's out there on the curb saying, my kids are in that second floor, you better have a plan. That only comes through training and having plays, having a game plan. So, the NIOSH top 5 got there on the backs of our brother and sister firefighters. Let's get rid of those. I mean, there shouldn't be a common theme in line of duty deaths. The line of duty deaths should be the one-off goofy things, not not that any line of duty death is great, but just we shouldn't have 5 things that appear in every report.
Yeah, thank you. Jesse?
I'd like to start by thanking you for having me on this as well. Always fantastic to hear all these different ideas. And I'll add that in today's day and age in the fire service, being a good guy or girl around the station isn't good enough, right? That's back to being, developing complacency, path of least resistance, all these things. We need to develop people, regardless of their roles, who are good on scene. That means we need to have a culture that supports being a student of the game. We need to be able to adapt and evolve as individuals and organizations, because at the end of the day, there is no excuse not to be prepared. What Chief Goldfeder said earlier, we didn't know what we didn't know. Now we know what we know, and we should know what we don't know. And there's a number of ways that we can improve that before the bell rings. And with the advent of modern technologies and everything else, there is truly no excuse not to be better prepared tomorrow than we were today. And there's a number of places you can go and get that information. Training.fsri.org is a good example of that. All the stuff we've talked about today is on there in some way, shape, or form, and it's free. So even better.
And it's a good way to end that, Jesse, because most of the training that's online is free. Now, I don't think you probably would agree with me that YouTube is not a training video platform. It probably gets us in more trouble because you see things on there. But, training is free. Go look at a variety of different places. and use that online training. Virtual training may not be the best way to do it, but I will tell you in today's age, the young kids, that's how they want to learn. That's how they're going to go look and search out for stuff. I will close with this comment is that we did this webinar in order to maybe bring out some issues that you haven't thought about, maybe to challenge you. But I'm going to use, Brian, your statement was it's time for us to end the common theme of why firefighters are injured or killed. It is the same reasons over and over and over again. It's time to end this. So, with that, we will ask Sherry, our webinar manager. She'll close out the webinar. Thank all the attendees for being here. I thank you guys for a great presentation, and have a great day.
We done? We there?